The galaxy's edge was a place of uneasy alliances and fragile peace, held together by treaties that were more patchwork than ironclad. For centuries, the Exarelian Empire had dominated this region, an empire renowned for its military prowess and rigid social order. Their ships, gleaming with dark metallic hues, symbolized both fear and order in equal measure. They were a species that thrived on control and strength, seeing diplomacy as a weakness and compromise as surrender. Humanity, on the other hand, was a relatively new player on the galactic stage. Their first foray into interstellar travel had occurred just over a century ago, a blink of an eye compared to the ancient empires they now stood among. Yet in that short time, humans had gained a reputation for their ingenuity, adaptability, and unrelenting curiosity. For most species, humanity was an anomaly, not particularly advanced in technology, not overwhelmingly strong or durable, yet somehow always managing to survive and even thrive in situations where others might falter. The Exarelians, however, did not share this begrudging respect. To them, humans were nothing more than an annoyance, a noisy, ambitious upstart race that dared to encroach upon sectors long claimed by the Empire. The contested regions were rich in resources, rare minerals, energy-rich nebulae, and habitable planets teeming with potential. To the Exarelians, these were not just territories, they were the lifeblood of their empire. To humanity, they were the next frontier. The conflict began subtly, as most do, with diplomatic disputes and economic posturing. Human trade ships were subjected to rigorous inspections by Exarelian patrols, often delayed for weeks under the pretense of security concerns. In response, human corporations began rerouting their trade lanes, avoiding Cerelian space entirely. This infuriated the Exarelians, who saw the move as an act of defiance. Tensions escalated when a small mining colony on the fringes of human space reported that Cerelian vessels had destroyed their supply shipments, leaving the settlers stranded. Despite these provocations, humanity's leaders remained committed to diplomacy. The United Earth Coalition UEC, humanity's governing body for interstellar affairs, dispatched envoys to Cerelian space, bearing offers of trade agreements and territorial compromises. They hoped to appeal to the Exarelians' sense of logic, believing that cooperation would benefit both sides. The Exarelians responded with silence. It wasn't until a formal summit was convened at the neutral space station of Arcturus Prime that the UEC finally received an answer. High Chancellor Sivrax of the Exarelian Empire attended the meeting, flanked by his advisors and an imposing contingent of soldiers. The Exarelian leader was a towering figure, his presence commanding the room with an air of disdainful superiority. His scaled skin shimmered under the station's artificial lights, a reminder of the genetic perfection the Exarelians prided themselves on. The human delegation, led by Ambassador Elaine Carter, was met with barely concealed contempt. As she presented humanity's proposals, Sivrax listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he stood and spoke with a voice that resonated like thunder. "Your words are meaningless," Sivrax declared, his golden eyes narrowing. "You trespass in territories that have belonged to the Exarelian Empire for millennia. Your kind is reckless, arrogant, and unworthy of the space you occupy. There will be no negotiation, only compliance. Withdraw from the contested sectors immediately, or face the consequences." Ambassador Carter held her ground, her calm demeanor betraying none of the tension she felt. "High Chancellor Sivrax," she replied, her voice steady but firm, "we seek only a fair resolution. Humanity has no desire for conflict, but we will not abandon our people or our right to explore and settle unclaimed worlds. Surely there is a path forward that benefits us both." Sivrax's laughter was cold and hollow. "You misunderstand, Ambassador. The Exarelian Empire does not share. We take what is ours, and we destroy what defies us." With that, the summit ended. Sivrax and his delegation departed, leaving behind an unspoken but clear ultimatum. The human envoys returned to Earth, their hopes for peace dashed but their resolve strengthened. The next move came swiftly. A human exploration fleet, the Andromeda Expeditionary Corps, had been conducting surveys near the Zoran Nebula, a region rich in helium-3 deposits and strategically located near several trade routes. Despite being within neutral space, the fleet was ambushed by Xyrelian warships. The attack was brutal and efficient, leaving no survivors. A single distress signal, fragmented and desperate, managed to reach Earth before the ships were obliterated. The UEC convened an emergency session. The mood was grim but resolute. "This cannot go unanswered," Admiral Jonathan Reyes declared, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "They think we're weak. They think we'll back down. It's time to show them they're wrong." Despite calls for retaliation, humanity's leaders chose restraint. A final message was sent to the Xyrelian Empire, a plea for reason and an opportunity to de-escalate. The response came in the form of a galactic broadcast, a declaration of war from the Xyrelian Empire. Sivrax himself delivered the message, his expression filled with smug satisfaction. "Let it be known," he proclaimed, "that humanity's insolence shall be eradicated. The Xyrelian Empire will cleanse the galaxy of this upstart race, and their worlds will be ours." The broadcast was met with silence on Earth. For 2 days, there was no response from human leadership. Then, a single transmission was sent back to the Xyrelian Empire. It was short, direct, and delivered with chilling clarity. "Since you chose war, let us show you how it's done." The words echoed across human space, igniting a fire in the hearts of its people. Factories ramped up production of warships and weapons. Engineers worked tirelessly to perfect new technologies, while strategists devised plans that would capitalize on humanity's greatest strength, unpredictability. The galaxy held its breath, watching as a seemingly mismatched conflict began to unfold. Humanity, underestimated and dismissed, prepared to fight not just for survival but for the right to exist as equals among the stars. The Xyrelian fleet surged toward the edges of human space like an unstoppable wave. Thousands of sleek, black warships, bristling with advanced weaponry, cut through the void with precision. Each ship bore the markings of the Xyrelian Empire, their symbols of dominance etched into the hulls as reminders of their victories across the galaxy. They were confident, arrogant even, that this would be just another campaign of conquest or routine eradication of a lesser species that had dared to defy their rule. In the weeks following their declaration of war, the Xyrelians launched a series of calculated strikes on human outposts and colonies. The attacks were devastating, with entire settlements reduced to rubble and millions displaced or killed. The Empire's strategy was clear: overwhelm humanity with their superior firepower and force an unconditional surrender before Earth could fully mobilize its defenses. Yet even in the face of such destruction, humanity did not falter. On Earth and throughout the colonies, the words of the USE's final message, "Since you chose war, let us show you how it's done," became a rallying cry. Factories worked around the clock, churning out ships and weapons at a pace that defied expectations. Engineers and scientists pushed the limits of human ingenuity, developing experimental technologies that had previously existed only in theory. Humanity, backed into a corner, was now fighting with the desperation of a species determined to survive. The Xyrelians expected their initial offensives to be met with disorganized resistance, but what they encountered was far from it. In the asteroid belt near the Vega system, a small contingent of human frigates and destroyers launched a daring counterattack on a Xyrelian supply convoy. Despite being outnumbered 3-1, the human ships employed hit-and-run tactics, using the dense asteroid field as cover. They struck quickly and with precision, targeting the Xyrelian fleet's logistical ships and retreating before the larger warships could retaliate. The battle was over in less than an hour, but its impact was profound. For the first time, the Xyrelians realized that humanity's strength lay not in brute force but in their ability to adapt. Every encounter, every skirmish, provided humanity with valuable data. The Xyrelians, who had spent centuries perfecting rigid battle formations and predictable tactics, struggled to anticipate the chaotic and unorthodox strategies employed by their human adversaries. In response to these early setbacks, the Xyrelians deployed their most feared weapon, the Eclipse Breaker, a dreadnought of unparalleled size and power. It was a city in space, armed with enough firepower to destroy entire planets. The ship was a marvel of Xyrelian engineering, with impenetrable shields, advanced targeting systems, and a crew of thousands. It had been the linchpin of the Empire's military dominance for centuries, and its mere presence was enough to demoralize entire civilizations. The Eclipse Breaker and its escort fleet entered human space with the precision of a scalpel, cutting through defenses with ease. Their target was the Proxima Centauri colonies, a cluster of human settlements vital to Earth's economy and supply chain. The Cyrelians expected little resistance. They were wrong. As the dreadnought approached Proxima Centauri's outer defenses, it encountered a series of strange anomalies. At first, the ex-Cyrelian commanders dismissed them as technical glitches, radar blips, power fluctuations, and communications interference. But as the anomalies grew more frequent and more disruptive, it became clear that something was amiss. Unbeknownst to the ex-Cyrelians, humanity had been preparing for this moment. Using experimental stealth technology, human ships had been shadowing the Eclipse Breaker for weeks, gathering intelligence and mapping its vulnerabilities. The anomalies were the result of electromagnetic pulses emitted by human drones, designed to disrupt the ex-Cyrelian fleet's advanced systems. The ambush was perfectly timed. As the Eclipse Breaker entered the Proxima Centauri system, it was greeted not by scattered resistance but by a coordinated human fleet. Hundreds of ships, ranging from agile fighters to heavily armed cruisers, emerged from the shadows. They attacked in waves, overwhelming the ex-Cyrelian fleet with sheer unpredictability. Human fighters darted between the dreadnought's massive turrets, targeting weak points in its armor. Bombers deployed kinetic weapons, solid projectiles accelerated to near light speeds that bypassed the dreadnought's energy shields. Meanwhile, human frigates used advanced jamming systems to blind the ex-Cyrelian fleet's targeting systems, turning their overwhelming firepower into a liability. The battle raged for hours, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The ex-Cyrelians, unaccustomed to prolonged engagements, began to falter. Their rigid formations and reliance on centralized command structures left them vulnerable to humanity's decentralized and flexible tactics. Human commanders, operating independently, adapted to the shifting battlefield with remarkable speed, exploiting every opportunity to gain the upper hand. The climax of the battle came when a squadron of human corvettes, equipped with prototype cloaking devices, infiltrated the Eclipse Breaker's defensive perimeter. Their target was the ship's primary reactor, a massive fusion core buried deep within its hull. The mission was a suicide run, and the pilots knew it. Yet they pressed on, maneuvering through a hail of enemy fire to deliver their payloads. The first few strikes caused minor damage, but the final torpedo found its mark. The explosion ripped through the reactor chamber, triggering a chain reaction that crippled the dreadnought's systems. The Eclipse Breaker, once the pride of the ex-Cyrelian fleet, was now a helpless behemoth drifting in space. As the dreadnought's crew scrambled to contain the damage, the human fleet regrouped for a final assault. In a coordinated strike, they targeted the ship's remaining weapon systems and engines, rendering it completely inoperable. The ex-Cyrelian fleet, demoralized and leaderless, began to retreat. The destruction of the Eclipse Breaker sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the ex-Cyrelian Empire had suffered a decisive defeat. The loss of their flagship was not just a military setback, but a blow to their reputation as an invincible force. Humanity, though battered and bloodied, had proven that they were not to be underestimated. Their ingenuity, resilience, and willingness to adapt had turned the tide of the war, at least for now. But the battle was far from over. As both sides licked their wounds and prepared for the next confrontation, one thing was clear: humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through diplomacy but through fire and steel. The galaxy held its collective breath as the Cyrelian Empire recoiled from the shocking destruction of their flagship, the Eclipse Breaker. The ship, once a symbol of their military dominance, was now a ruin floating in human-controlled space. For the ex-Cyrelians, it was not just a loss of hardware but a profound humiliation. Empires built on fear do not endure long if that fear is diminished, and for the first time in centuries, the ex-Cyrelian grip on the galaxy felt tenuous. The reaction was immediate and explosive. The High Council of Zigrelia convened in a session that had not occurred in over 300 years, a war summit involving every major faction of their empire. Seated in a chamber of crystalline architecture that shimmered with artificial starlight, the council members debated humanity's fate. To some, the human success was merely a fluke, an anomaly that could be corrected with overwhelming force. Others, more cautious, argued that humanity had proven itself to be a more dangerous adversary than anticipated. Regardless of the differing opinions, one resolution was unanimous: humanity would pay for its insolence, and the galaxy would be reminded why the Exirelian Empire had ruled unchallenged for millennia. While the Exirelians planned their revenge, humanity pressed its advantage. The destruction of the Eclipse Breaker had bought them precious time, and the United Earth Coalition knew it could not afford to squander it. Factories on Earth, Mars, and the colonies worked around the clock, producing everything from basic ammunition to advanced warships. But the key to humanity's strategy was not in sheer numbers, it was in innovation. The same trait that had allowed humans to outwit predators and survive in hospitable environments on Earth was now being applied to the battlefield. Operation Chimera became the cornerstone of humanity's next move. Conceived by Admiral Reyes and his top strategists, it was a campaign designed to cripple the Exirelian war machine from within. Instead of engaging the Empire head-on in traditional battles, which humanity could not hope to win, Operation Chimera focused on surgical strikes deep within enemy territory. The goal was to target key infrastructure shipyards, supply depots, and research facilities while sowing chaos and confusion among the Exirelian ranks. It was a strategy born of necessity, but one that required extraordinary precision and courage. The first phase of the operation targeted a massive Cyrelian shipyard orbiting the colony world of Zephyra. This facility was responsible for constructing the Empire's most advanced warships, including replacements for the Eclipse Breaker. Intelligence reports indicated that the shipyard was heavily fortified, with layers of automated defenses and patrol fleets guarding it at all times. Yet, for all its technological sophistication, the Exirelians had not anticipated the level of subterfuge humanity was willing to employ. Using newly developed cloaking technology, a squadron of human stealth ships infiltrated the outer perimeter of the shipyard. These vessels were equipped with electromagnetic countermeasures that disrupted the Exirelian sensors, rendering them effectively invisible. The approach was nerve-wracking. One mistake could have exposed the entire operation. Inside the ships, human pilots and operatives remained silent, their breathing steady, as they navigated through the dense network of defensive satellites and patrol routes. Once the human ships were in position, they deployed their payloads, swarms of AI-operated drones, each no larger than a human hand. These drones were programmed for sabotage, equipped with miniature explosives and hacking tools that could disable key systems with surgical precision. As the drones infiltrated the shipyard, they began targeting power grids, shield generators, and weapons arrays. Meanwhile, human operatives in exosuits infiltrated the facility itself, using advanced climbing equipment to traverse the massive superstructure. Their mission was twofold: plant high-yield explosives at structural weak points and retrieve classified data on Exirelian ship designs. The operation unfolded with clockwork precision. Explosions rippled through the shipyard, sending shockwaves that could be felt from orbit. Entire sections of the facility collapsed, taking with them the half-completed hulls of Exirelian warships. The drones, operating autonomously, continued their assault, disabling automated defenses and leaving the facility vulnerable to further attacks. By the time the Exirelians realized what was happening, it was too late. The human strike teams had already exfiltrated, their mission a resounding success. The destruction of the Zephyra shipyard was a turning point in the war. It was not just a tactical victory but a psychological one. For the first time, the Exirelians experienced the kind of fear they had long inflicted on others. Humanity's unconventional tactics and willingness to take risks made them an unpredictable and terrifying adversary. The Empire, accustomed to crushing its enemies with overwhelming force, now found itself outmaneuvered at every turn. But the Exirelians were not idle in their response. They launched a massive counteroffensive, dispatching dozens of war fleets to human-controlled territories. These fleets were commanded by the most experienced Exirelian admirals, their strategies honed by centuries of warfare. The Empire's goal was simple: to overwhelm humanity with sheer numbers and force them into submission. The centerpiece of this offensive was the Ascendant Fury, a new dreadnought designed to replace the Eclipse Breaker. It was larger, faster, and armed with weapons capable of devastating entire fleets in a single volley. The battle for Sol began with the arrival of the Ascendant Fury and its escort fleet at the edge of the solar system. The Exarelians believed that Earth's defenses would crumble under the weight of their assault, but humanity had been preparing for this moment. Over the weeks, since the destruction of the Zephyra shipyard, Earth's orbital defenses had been fortified with cutting-edge technology. Planetary shields powered by experimental fusion reactors now enveloped major cities, while orbital platforms bristling with railguns and missile launchers formed a deadly gauntlet around the planet. As the Exarelian fleet advanced, it encountered unexpected resistance. Human ships, using the gravitational wells of the solar system's planets and moons, launched hit-and-run attacks that disrupted the Exarelian formations. Meanwhile, automated drone fleets harassed the enemy from multiple angles, forcing them to expend precious resources on defense. The Ascendant Fury, though formidable, found itself struggling to adapt to the chaotic tactics employed by the human fleet. The climax of the battle came when humanity unveiled its latest weapon, the Prometheus Array. Hidden on the far side of the moon, this massive railgun used electromagnetic pulses to accelerate projectiles to near light speeds. Its first shot struck the Ascendant Fury with pinpoint accuracy, piercing its shields and shattering its primary reactor. The explosion lit up the darkness of space, sending debris hurtling in all directions. The destruction of the dreadnought left the Exarelian fleet leaderless and disoriented, giving humanity the opening it needed to launch a coordinated counterattack. By the time the battle ended, the Exarelian fleet was in full retreat. Humanity had defended its home, but the cost was staggering. Entire colonies had been destroyed, and Earth itself bore the scars of the conflict. Yet, for all the destruction, humanity had achieved the impossible. It had stood its ground against the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The victory at Sol marked a new chapter in the war. Humanity, though battered, had proven that it was a force to be reckoned with. As the survivors rebuilt and prepared for the next phase of the conflict, one thing was certain: the Exarelian Empire would never again underestimate the resilience and determination of the human spirit. The ruins of the Exarelian fleet scattered the outer edges of the Sol system, their twisted metal and shattered remnants drifting silently in the void. Humanity had defended its home, but the victory came with a price that echoed across every corner of Earth and its colonies. Cities on Mars lay in ruin, orbital defense platforms hung crippled and broken, and millions of lives had been lost in the relentless waves of the Exarelian assault. The battle for Sol was over, but the war was not. For the Exarelian Empire, the loss was catastrophic. Their reputation for invincibility, the bedrock of their galactic dominance, had been shattered. Empires built on fear crumble quickly when fear turns to doubt. High Chancellor Sivrax, once commanding and unyielding, now faced a divided council. The blame game had begun within Exarelian leadership, admirals questioning each other's strategies, politicians lamenting the Empire's hubris, and scientists scrambling to understand how a primitive species had outmaneuvered them at every turn. Still, Sivrax was not ready to surrender. His pride and that of his empire demanded retribution. On Earth, the mood was equally tense. The United Earth Coalition, despite its victory, knew that humanity could not withstand another full-scale assault. The Exarelians would return, and when they did, they would come with even greater numbers and resolve. Humanity's only hope was to end the war before that happened. The question was how. The answer came from an unexpected source: a captured Exarelian officer taken prisoner during the battle for Sol. The officer, a tactical advisor named Tal, had been injured during the retreat and left behind by her fleet. Though defiant and initially uncooperative, Tal's views began to shift as she witnessed the humanity of her captors. She saw their resilience, their camaraderie, and their refusal to give up even in the face of overwhelming odds. Over time, her disdain gave way to a grudging respect, and she made a shocking proposal: a way to strike directly at the heart of the Exarelian Empire. Tal revealed the existence of a Cyrelian command hub located deep within their territory, a massive station known as the Nexus Spire. This facility was the nerve center of the ex-Cyrelian military, coordinating fleet movements and relaying orders across the Empire. If humanity could destroy it, they would cripple the ex-Cyrelians' ability to wage war. But there was a catch: the Nexus Spire was hidden within a region of space surrounded by gravitational anomalies and patrolled by the Empire's most elite forces. Reaching it would be nearly impossible. Nearly, Tal had said, her gaze steady. But not for you. The UAC strategists debated the proposal for days, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. Ultimately, they knew they had no choice. Humanity could not survive a prolonged war of attrition. This was their chance to end the conflict on their terms. Operation Horizon was born. A fleet of humanity's best ships was assembled, including the most advanced prototypes developed since the start of the war. These ships were equipped with the latest stealth and jamming technology, designed to evade even the ex-Cyrelians' sophisticated sensors. At the heart of the fleet was the Resolute Dawn, a newly built command ship armed with a prototype weapon, the gravimetric disruptor. This device, capable of destabilizing gravitational fields, would be humanity's key to bypassing the anomalies protecting the Nexus Spire. The journey to a Cyrelian space was perilous. The fleet traveled through uncharted regions, avoiding patrols and relying on Tal's knowledge of Cyrelian routes. Tensions ran high among the crew. They knew there would be no reinforcements, no retreat. This was a mission they were unlikely to return from, and yet every soldier, pilot, and engineer was resolute. They were fighting not just for survival, but for a future where humanity could stand as equals among the stars. When the fleet finally arrived at the edge of the Nexus Spire's protected zone, the scale of their task became clear. The station was a colossal structure, its spires extending in all directions like a web of glass and steel. Surrounding it was an armada of Cyrelian ships, their formations tighter and more disciplined than any humanity had faced before. But it was the gravitational anomalies that posed the greatest challenge. Invisible to the naked eye, these distortions created pockets of intense gravitational pull, capable of tearing a ship apart in seconds. The attack began with precision strikes. Human stealth ships infiltrated the outer defenses, deploying drones to disable sensor arrays and disrupt communications. As the ex-Cyrelian fleet scrambled to respond, the Resolute Dawn moved into position, its gravimetric disruptor charging. The first pulse from the device sent ripples through the anomalies, creating a temporary corridor for the fleet to advance. The Cyrelians, realizing the threat, launched a counterattack. Waves of fighters and frigates swarmed the human fleet, their weapons lighting up the darkness of space. The battle was chaotic and brutal, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Human ships, though outnumbered, used hit-and-run tactics to devastating effect, exploiting the gaps created by their cloaking devices and jamming systems. Inside the Nexus Spire, Tal led a strike team of human operatives. Their mission was to plant charges at critical points within the station's infrastructure, ensuring its destruction. The team moved swiftly through the corridors, encountering fierce resistance from Cyrelian defenders. Tal, now fully committed to humanity's cause, fought alongside her captors with a determination that surprised even herself. As the battle reached its climax, the Resolute Dawn delivered the final blow. The gravimetric disruptor, now fully charged, unleashed a pulse that destabilized the anomalies in the station's core. The Nexus Spire began to collapse, its spires crumbling as explosions rippled through its structure. The human strike team barely escaped, their shuttle racing away as the station disintegrated behind them. The destruction of the Nexus Spire sent shockwaves throughout the ex-Cyrelian Empire. Without their command hub, the Empire's fleets were thrown into disarray, unable to coordinate their efforts. For the first time in centuries, the ex-Cyrelians were vulnerable. Humanity seized the moment, launching a series of offensives that pushed the ex-Cyrelians back to their core worlds. But humanity did not press for total annihilation. Instead, they offered a truce, one that recognized humanity's sovereignty and guaranteed their right to exist as equals among the stars. The ex-Cyrelians, humbled and weakened, had no choice but to accept. The war ended not with triumphal celebrations but with quiet resolve. Humanity had survived, but the cost was etched into the faces of those who remained. Entire colonies had been lost, countless lives sacrificed, and the scars of the conflict would take generations to heal. Yet there was hope. The Cyrelians, though defeated, began to rebuild alongside humanity, their arrogance tempered by the lessons of war. As Earth and its colonies turned their attention to the future, the galaxy watched with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Humanity, once underestimated, had proven its strength, its resilience, and its capacity for both destruction and compassion. The war had shown the galaxy what humans were capable of, not just in battle but in their ability to forge a new path forward. In the end, the Cyrelian Empire learned a lesson they would never forget: humanity was not a species to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species that thrived in adversity and emerged stronger for it. And as the stars bore witness to this new chapter, one thing was clear: humanity's story was only just beginning.